I thought I would do that for dramatic lawyer effect. Hey, week 7, let's talk about defense counsel a little bit. There, our last chapter, first off, talked about prosecutors, and we talked about the idea of prosecutorial misconduct. I kind of like this this example of prosecutorial misconduct. I'm going to start wading through your papers right after I get done with this, as a matter of fact, and trying to get those back to you, your drafts. You know, if you get a draft and it says analysis, so what you've basically done is you've given me a report on prosecutorial misconduct, and you haven't looked at any of the issues. You haven't developed any of the issues. You have maybe just covered the prompts themselves. And I want to see you go beyond that and really think and see what issues that you do have. And you can look at this case from multiple different directions. From the victim, from the media standpoint, the prosecutors, and the accused. A lot of different things are going on here in this. So I really want you to spend the time and really make this worthwhile, especially since you have 2 weeks to write a pretty short paper. Now let's talk about defense counsel. Right to counsel exists, and it started where it began to expand under Gideon versus Wainwright. In Gideon, a guy gets arrested for breaking into a bar in Florida in the, I want to say, early 60s. And he goes to trial. He's homeless, says, hey, I don't have the capability of defending myself. I need the help of the state so that I can get a fair trial. The judge says, I agree, but in Florida you only get appointed counsel in death penalty cases. So they go to trial, and it takes, a day, and he gets convicted and sent to prison. He then files a writ of habeas corpus. Now, whenever you see something that involves the criminal system, and you see the 2 names, as opposed to a defendant's name and a state, you see 2 names, that almost always means that it's a habeas corpus action, which is a challenge to unlawful confinement. What Gideon is saying is that he was being held by Wainwright, the warden of the prison he was in, illegally. And his argument was that he didn't have fair representation during trial. So the case makes it to the U.S. Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court agrees that when a person is in jeopardy for felony, that they should have representation. And then there's numerous cases that follow Wainwright, and they're listed in the chapter. So if you're thinking about going to law school, these would be good cases to get familiar with, because you're going to see them again in law school, and they're going to be making references to them, whether it's right to counsel at the site of arrest, whether it's right to counsel for arraignment. At what point does the critical stages of the proceedings occur? Those are all factors that are discussed in the cases that the book lays out pretty well. Now, defense attorneys, are part of that courtroom work group. Of course, we know now, if you read the chapter well on prosecutors, that that prosecutors are the most important person within the courtroom work group, and that the defense counsel is required to work within that environment, and at times doesn't really have that much power. The defense counsel doesn't make charging decisions, has limited input on the plea bargain, especially if you get a judge that lays down the plea bargain, directly. So now that as we look at that, understand that the uncooperative defense attorney, may face sanctions, meaning that the judge will fine him or do other things that impact his ability for representation in a case because of perceived misconduct. The other thing to think about is how defense counsel is parsed out to people that need appointed counsel. And there's different methods, and the methods are discussed in the book, from being appointed, going onto a list and getting clients from that list, to some places will kind of incestuously give work to attorneys, and then of course there's the private counsel. So with that, the next issue that comes up is the idea of lawyers and ethics. And lawyers must zealously represent their client. That doesn't mean that they can become involved in perjury. It doesn't mean that they can lie to the court. And it doesn't mean that they can misrepresent things to the court. Now, they will certainly have a different look at evidence than the prosecution has, but there's a pretty strict code of ethics when it comes to defense counsel, especially in dealing with the court itself. So those are the major points for defense counsel. Well, here's the biggest one. What's the most difficult thing for a defense attorney? Is it getting clients? And I'd suggest the most difficult thing for the defense attorney is getting paid. That can always be difficult. So with that being said, I hope to see you all in class.